You say you want success, but tell me honestly, is it success you really want, or is it feeling chosen by someone? Because there is a brutal difference between achieving something and wanting to be validated for it. Most people who claim to seek growth are actually thirst for approval. They want someone from the outside to prove what they cannot sustain on their own worth. They want to be seen, admired, acknowledged, not because it strengthens who they are, but because it silences the insecurity that screams inside them. You don't want to grow up. You want the feeling that you are finally enough, that someone looked at you and said, with their eyes or with words, you are worth it, because deep down, you don't believe it on your own. If you are enjoying the content, subscribe to the channel and leave your like to support our work. If you've made it this far, it's because on some level you feel this way. You feel that something is wrong with the way you relate to approval, and maybe you're tired of begging for recognition, of losing yourself trying to be what others want. But let me tell you something that will shock you. There is a scientific explanation for this that will completely change how you view your behavior. And it all started with a revolutionary discovery by Burrhus Frederick Skinner in the 1950s. Burrhus Frederick Skinner was not just any psychologist. He was a genius who decoded the secret code of human behavior. And during his experiments with pigeons and rats, he made a discovery that shook the foundations of behavioral psychology. Burrhus Frederick Skinner discovered that there is a specific pattern of approval that not only motivates behaviors, it makes them completely addictive. More addictive than heroin, more addictive than cocaine, more addictive than any chemical ever studied by neuroscience. And here's the terror. You are exposed to this pattern every day of your life without even realizing it. It is shaping your decisions, controlling your emotions, and determining how you feel about yourself. The discovery of Burrhus Frederick Skinner revealed that the human brain has a fatal vulnerability when it comes to validation, and that vulnerability has a name that will give you the creeps. Look at these situations and tell me if you recognize the devastating pattern. An employee works late waiting for praise from the boss. Sometimes he gets recognition. Other times he gets completely ignored. He never knows when he will be appreciated. So he keeps working himself to death, waiting for that validation that may or may not come. A person posts something on social media hoping for likes and comments. Sometimes it goes viral. Other times it goes unnoticed. They never know when it will be seen, so they keep posting compulsively, addicted to the possibility of being noticed. A child does everything to please his parents. Sometimes he receives approval. Other times he is criticized. He never knows when he will be accepted, so he shapes his entire personality trying to be worthy of love. An entrepreneur launches product after product, hoping for market recognition. Sometimes they succeed. Other times they fail. They never know when they will be validated. So they live on an emotional roller coaster dependent on other people's opinions. Did you notice the terrifying pattern? In all of these cases, the person is stuck in what Burrhus Frederick Skinner called the variable intermittent reinforcement schedule, the most powerful psychological mechanism for creating behavioral addiction ever discovered by science. But you don't know when you'll get approval, and that's no accident. It's exactly this uncertainty that makes you a validation addicted. Here's where it gets really scary. Burrhus Frederick Skinner discovered that when you don't know when you're going to receive approval, your brain goes into a state of hypervigilance that releases massive amounts of dopamine, far more than any synthetic drug can produce. Cocaine increases dopamine levels by approximately 150%, but the intermittent validation schedule can increase these levels by up to 1,000%. It's as if your brain has become a dopamine powerhouse working on constant overdose. And here's the most diabolic part. Unlike drugs, which eventually stop working due to tolerance, intermittent validation never loses its power. In fact, it gets more powerful over time. Why does this happen? Because your primitive brain can't distinguish between social approval and tribal survival. When you don't know if you're going to get recognition, your nervous system interprets it as a matter of life or death. It releases adrenaline, cortisol, and dopamine simultaneously, creating a neurological cocktail that is literally irresistible. You need that approval to feel safe, to feel alive. Burrhus Frederick Skinner proved this with controlled experiments. Subjects subjected to intermittent reinforcement continued performing behaviors even after the reward stopped completely. They were neurologically programmed to keep trying, and we humans are no different. Our 200,000-year-old brains didn't evolve to deal with the complexity of modern validation. They still function as if every no is a threat to our survival in the group. The consequences of this discovery are devastating for those who live this way. People trapped in this cycle of intermittent validation develop symptoms that are identical to those of drug addicts. First consequence: emotional tolerance. You need ever-increasing doses of approval to feel good. Simple praise no longer suffices. You need public recognition, awards, status, and yet the emptiness returns within hours. Second consequence: withdrawal syndrome. When validation doesn't come, you experience physical anxiety, irritability, depression, a desperate feeling that you're worthless. Your body. Third consequence: compulsive behavior. You begin to shape your personality, your decisions, even your values to maximize your chances of approval. You become a false version of yourself, created specifically to please. Fourth consequence: loss of autonomous identity. You stop knowing who you really are when no one is looking. Your self-esteem becomes completely dependent on external factors that you have no control over. Fifth consequence: unconscious sabotage. Paradoxically, you begin to sabotage relationships and opportunities because the uncertainty of intermittent validation becomes more familiar than emotional stability. Burrus Frederick Skinner documented that experimental subjects came to the point of preferring the unpredictable intermittent schedule to constant, guaranteed rewards. They became addicted to the uncertainty itself. That's what happens to you. You get so used to the emotional roller coaster of intermittent validation that steady relationships feel boring. Jobs with constant recognition feel too easy. Millions of people live trapped in this psychological trap, never understanding why they constantly feel empty, anxious, and dissatisfied, even when they achieve everything they ever wanted. But here is the truth that can set you free. Once you understand the mechanism, you can free yourself from it. Burrus Frederick Skinner not only discovered the problem, he also mapped out the solution. First step: brutal recognition. You need to identify in which areas of your life you are intermittently and compulsively begging for validation. Work, relationships, family, social networks. Where does your self-esteem depend on the unpredictable approval of others? Step 2. Conscious deactivation. You need to consciously decide to withdraw your emotional energy from these external sources of validation. This means stopping constantly checking to see if people approve of your choices. Stop modifying your behavior to please others. Stop interpreting silence as rejection. Step 3. Building internal validation. You need to develop internal criteria for success that are completely independent of the opinions of others. Define your own standards of excellence. Celebrate your achievements based on your values, not the values of others. Step 4. Practice self-approval. Instead of relying on intermittent validation from others, you begin to give yourself consistent recognition for your own progress. You become your own trusted source of approval. Fifth step: neurological resignification. With time and conscious practice, you literally reconstruct the neurological patterns of your brain. The dopamine that was previously released only by external validation is now produced by your own autonomy. Burrus Frederick Skinner proved that conditioned behaviors can be deconditioned through controlled exposure and replacement of reward patterns. You can become emotionally independent of the approval of others without becoming callous or antisocial. True psychological freedom happens when you can receive external validation with gratitude, but without dependence. When you act based on your own criteria. When your inner peace does not waver based on the unpredictable reactions of the world. But it takes courage. The courage to face the void you've been trying to fill with the approval of others. The courage to hold yourself up emotionally, even when no one is applauding. The discovery of Burrus Frederick Skinner about the addictive power of intermittent validation could be the key to finally breaking free from a psychological prison you may not have even known existed. Now I want to hear from you. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment saying, "I don't need to be chosen to feel complete." Write this as a commitment to yourself, because it's when you declare this that you begin to take control of your own story.